Hey there, I'm Matto, and this is another devlog for our Night Run project. In this video, I'm going to talk about the graphic design process for creating the billboards for the 4 imaginary fashion houses that are going to appear in the world of the game. So welcome back. There's been a lot going on behind the scenes over here. We've moved into a new studio here in Brooklyn, still getting everything kind of set up, but now we're getting back to work. And so I'm here to give an update on the graphic design process that is going to feed into the generative system that will generate the final collection of NFT artwork for the Night Run NFT collection. The process for this was, as I mentioned in the previous video, I generated a whole bunch of different AI photography that I kind of clustered into these 4 imaginary fashion houses. And the next step was that I brought in a graphic designer, Ivano Solonia, to work with me to kind of take that photography and design it into a kind of a design system that would play out on the billboards in the game, along with the kind of branding for the project itself, the logo, the website, and so on. I'm gonna focus in this video on the design for the token art. And so we started with me giving Ivano a kind of a brief, saying this is kind of how I'm thinking about it. This is kind of what the 4 different fashion houses kind of represent in my mind. And then he went and pulled together this kind of mood board of different billboards, kind of fashion advertisements and typographic treatments to kind of start to get a kind of a shared design vocabulary together. This kind of gave us a way to speak to each other about, okay, we kind of want some of this kind of minimal typography, this kind of Swiss graphic design style stuff. Maybe we want to use some kind of more kind of glitchy AI typography, talking about kind of using type as a graphic element. And this kind of allowed us to get on the same page of like, okay, I like this, I don't like that, and just kind of gave us a body of references. And then we started to basically work with the photos. Ivano did like a very quick first kind of copy and paste pass at playing with some ideas, which gave us some more stuff to discuss and to start to think about, okay, what direction do we want to go in? And then the next step was that we built out these systems based on each of the houses along a kind of a series of axes, right? So we have, in this case, kind of chaos versus minimalism, classical versus progressive, and we're kind of moving these elements around like, well, actually this is more chaotic. And we actually adjusted these as we went. You know, as the design started to take shape, I realized like, oh, actually, no, you know what, this actually should be more minimalistic, or this is actually, you know, needs to be more kind of classical feeling. And so there was a kind of a rebalancing as we went, but we started kind of laying these out with these 4 quadrants, you know, graphics versus images, full versus empty, in this case, legible versus illegible, dense type versus sparse type, color and form, right? Colorful versus monochromatic, abstract versus representational. And so this kind of then gave us a way to position the 4 houses also in relationship to each other, right? Because it was important to me that I wanted them to feel distinct and to not just be kind of small variations on each other. So we had these 2 houses with white statues, 2 houses with black statues, and I wanted to have 2 that were kind of colorful, 2 that were more monochromatic. And so kind of starting to position these things around those quadrants was a good way to kind of just get started and to position these things in relationship to one another. So then we got into the first house that we did was the winter house, which ended up being called Urea, but we didn't have the name for it at this stage. And so then we started to select some photos and actually to make some layouts and type treatments. And so one of the ones that we actually ended up picking was this kind of close-ups on over interiors. So we have these kind of monastery, parametric architecture, mountain fortress spaces, and then we're placing these portrait style photographs over them with some type. We also chose this image slide with kind of one cropped image and then another image, this kind of simple double portrait. And one of the things that we discovered late in the process was this idea of this kind of dynamic spacing of the type. This whole thing has this kind of long rectangular shape language showing up in it. And so spreading the type out was one of the things that we could make dynamic in the final generative pass to just create some subtle variations between images, right? Because that was the other challenge of this is, okay, maybe we can make some layouts that we like, but how are these going to work in a generative system, and how are we going to generate many different variations from a limited set of photographs? Because one of the things that I was thinking early on was, oh, well, if we're going to have, let's say, 256 final layouts, maybe I'll generate 256 images, because that is possible with AI. But one of the things that Ivano pushed me on was to say, hey, there's this really high variability of quality in these images, and let's really try to dial it down to a really narrow set and then do combinatorics between them so that every image is really strong in and of itself rather than risking having some kind of filler images. And I think that was a kind of a good push in the right direction. So, once we got the kind of winter house, then that gave us a kind of one quadrant to work from. We moved on to the fall house, Bronte, which is more glitchy. It's got these kind of graphic overlays. The logo itself has these kind of glitch elements that can also be varied procedurally, right? So each of the logos will be different. It's got this kind of combinatoric glitch component to it. The same with these kind of glitch elements, and then doing combinations of different photos and different backgrounds to get to the final system. It's really going to live and die by the photos, right? So now that I've kind of seen how the layout is working, I've gone back and generated a whole bunch more photos that kind of work in this style. And so, there's been a kind of a cyclical process of like, okay, make the layouts, make more photos. And now the next stage of the process is going to be to go in and actually start generating image variations and starting to actually finalize some of the imagery. For the spring house, this was the third one that we did. We added this kind of stripe device, which I really like the way it works with these photos because they're super colorful, right? So smearing out the colors, you get these really pretty kind of geometric, abstract compositions. These are some of my favorites, where we have the vertical stripes coming off of this kind of extreme wide angle AI explosion. These were generated during the early beta period of Stable Diffusion. You're not allowed to make these kind of extreme wide angle images anymore in their Dream Studio interface because it kind of causes the AI to blow up and make this kind of crazy abstract stuff. But I really love the way it looked, and so I generated a bunch of these before they made it impossible, and I'm really excited to include them in the collection. This is another one, right? I feel like they look almost like kind of Renaissance paintings, this kind of huge tableau, but it's just this kind of energetic, colorful chaos. I'm really, really happy with those. And then obviously there are some that are like these more representative type of beautiful women and kind of motocross imagery and stuff. So it's a mix. And then the last house that we did was Isa, which is the summer house. And this was actually maybe one of the hardest because I really love these kind of fashion portrait with these kind of colorful makeup, tattoos, whatever they are, right? These kind of colorful facial details. And so I wanted to keep it quite classical and minimalistic, not overwhelm the photos with a lot of stuff. But obviously we already have, the winter house, which is very minimalistic. And so we were kind of going back and forth and struggling. And we do have some of these kind of gridded layouts, which are kind of similar, but add these kind of graphic details and these kind of marble textures. But then one of the things that we came up with late was this 3D treatment, which I'm really happy with, where we have these kind of subdivided planes that have this almost kind of city-like geometry, and then we're overlaying the texture of the photos, kind of warping and distorting them, and adding this kind of additional idea of this 3D manipulation of the images to kind of make this house stand on its own and to give it like a feeling of freshness relative to the others. And so that was kind of the process. There's going to be another generative layer that goes into this while we're actually generating the finals in Unity. What we're doing right now is bringing these Photoshop layout files into Unity and basically rebuilding them there so that we can do procedural variation of the source photos and also some shader work to get the overlays and interactions of the different elements working. But once we get all that set up and we get the new batch of photos in and any additional generative passes we're doing, we're going to be in pretty good shape. So we should be able to start showing off some stuff that is close to the final token art pretty soon. So I'm excited to be able to share that with you all. And yeah, as always, drop a comment down below. Let us know what you're thinking. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.